Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Inky Thoughts podcast. Today is a very special episode for me as an academic and tattoo lover myself, because I'm going to return back to these episodes now and then where I invite in other tattoo-loving academics. Today might be a little bit different from last time with Yig Shrink, who very much is openly advocating about tattoos and that, but no less, I would say, of a tattoo fan is here today. I have a person in with no small amount of accolades to her name. No small feat of which is that she's a professor of psychology at the University of Sunderland, if I have not done my research wrong. And not only that, she's also covered in tattoos to such an extent that most people probably have a little bit of ink envy if they are collectors themselves, I would argue. But before I get too deep into the details here, I would like to throw to Dr. Owens herself and let her introduce herself. So please,
Hello.
if you wouldn't.
Yeah, I am Dr. Rebecca Owens, and I am the interim head of School of Psychology at the University of Sunderland.
Oof, that was an even better title than I gave you in my gibberish there. But that you've how long have you been the head of psychology?
Since May, yeah. Yeah.
That is quite the step up, I would argue as well.
It was a massive step up, yeah. Massive, but yeah, take it all in your stride, don't you?
I mean, I'm not sure I will ever be head of a school of any kind myself, but I will live vicariously through you back here in this one. I know I keep yammering on about my PhD, but I mean, I didn't make it through a PhD even. So I have massive respect for anyone who does that, but let alone leading an institute or a school, that is quite something.
Thank
But
you.
before we dive even more into that, that's mainly me as a fan also of yours to some extent. Because Becci here, some that already love tattoo podcasts, there might be in the nerdier little community around researching that into it, like I am myself, may recognize Becci because she was actually part of another podcast, which I sadly haven't heard much noise in the podcast scene about in a while, but it was called Inking of Immunity.
Yes.
And it was led by, I always forget his name, he's such a nice guy.
Chris
Lynn.
Lynn. Yeah,
Chris
Lynn.
Lynn
Yeah.
led it. Lovely mustache, even lovelier
Brilliant.
guy.
Yeah.
It seems quite a brilliant researcher himself into biochemical anthropology, if I remember correctly.
Yes, that's right.
Along those lines. And they basically dove into whatever kind of research, even some really obscure fields sometimes. But that was the interesting thing. They really showed how much stuff connected to tattoos and how important I feel tattoo research could be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, Chris is a biomedical anthropologist, and like you say, looking at the biological impacts of tattooing on the immune system and things like that. So he was leading that, and we've took a break this last year. Our schedules just couldn't line up properly, and Mike, who was doing a PhD with Chris, had to take a sidestep out of his PhD for a while. I don't know if it's temporary or what, but yeah, so he had those things going on. Then I stepped up in me head of school position, and Chris he's got another really successful podcast called The Sausage of Science. So it's great, isn't it? So we just couldn't manage to get our schedules linked up, especially with them being over in Alabama and me being here in the UK.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So it's still sort of in the background, and we're looking at maybe creating a book, particularly with the content that we got from the first couple of series. But it was all about, like you say, bringing in a really multidisciplinary, integrated perspective on all matters of tattoo and things that you wouldn't have even thought of. Like we had someone talking about the chemical compounds of tattoo ink, and we're talking about it in therapeutic practices, cultural practitioners, and loads of it.
I mean, you went around a lot of stuff. Some of my favorite episodes, I can't remember her name, but that was the woman that have been part of finding tattoos on mummies in new digouts in Egypt.
Anne, yes.
There was and always a favorite of mine, and he will love this as I've met him in person and know his ego loves this by now. But also he is going to be on the podcast at some point as well if everything goes well. But Matt Lotter was also on, and that was also fantastic episode. Always a fantastic guy as well to talk to about all these things. But you had a lot of fascinating people on there. Did you also have already had it on the podcast? Now I'm just fanboying a bit, but you also have Adam on at one point, Adam McDade. I can't remember if
Oh
he
no,
did.
we didn't have
No,
Adam on
he's
there.
great
No.
though. He's absolutely fantastic as well.
Yeah. He did his PhD at my place. Yeah.
All right. Oh,
Yeah.
he's a lovely guy.
Yeah, he is. He's a good
Absolutely
lad.
lovely. And fascinating work he did, honestly. I saw I was at the conference earlier this year.
Hmm. Oh yes, of
Yes,
course.
inked up, marked out. And I saw Adam to do a little speech on that one
Oh,
about some of
bless.
his research, and that was actually quite great as well.
Oh, that's good. I was meant to be at that conference and then I couldn't go.
Oh, that's a shame. Like
Childcare
there are
issues. I
some
couldn't get
people in
there.
the, especially in the British scene of tattooed academics, that I really would have loved to meet in person.
Yeah.
And you and Michael Rees are the two I haven't, which is a
Oh,
shame because Michael's really great as well. Is also going
yeah.
to be on this, and
Oh, brilliant.
he's so friendly. Like he sent me his. Well, I think I can say it now because his book is officially out, and I do have an
Good.
official copy of it as well. But he
Oh,
did, just because he heard I was researching what I was, he sent me an electronic copy of the book, so I wouldn't have to
mhm.
spend 100 quid.
Oh, bless him. That's so good.
That's actually really sweet. But moving on from this as well, a bit on topic actually. Have you ever done any research into tattoos yourself? Has it ever tickled your fancy?
Yeah, I've done some on like from a psychological perspective. Yeah, we published a scoping review on that earlier this year, or was it the back end of last year? I can't even remember now. Just looking at what psychology says about tattooing, because there's not been a great deal done
Mm,
in psychology particularly, and then some of the people who we'd spoken to on the podcast had said like, well, there's not much more you can really do about psychology of tattooing and things,
ooh,
and
I
yeah,
would argue against that.
yeah, I would as well. And maybe there's like sort of political constraints around, things like
Mm,
funding and
uh,
things like that. I can understand, but from my perspective, there'd be, if there was an endless pot of money, and I know that's always the caveat, but if there was an endless pot
oh
of money,
yes.
there is so much research that you could do on the psychology of
Mm,
tattooing. Um, but what had really struck me from, even starting me psychology undergrad really was that the perspective in society, and it was echoed in the academic literature, that people with tattoos were deviant or defunct,
mm,
and
yeah.
so I'd started this scope and review process. It was just before I met Chris Lynn, actually, because this was published in collaboration with him. um we'd like I'd looked back from as far as I could access any psychology research to see, well, where did this attitude come from? Like this
Mm,
sort of, uh, I guess, medicalization of it in some respects,
yeah.
looking at it as in it was something that needed to be fixed. The perspective that, of criminal aspects and stuff like that. Where did it come from? And we couldn't even find it. It was just there. And
Yeah.
we kind of concluded that it was sort of it echoed the sort of introduction of clinical psychology and how the process of clinical psychology was going at that time, and you know what was going on in society and stuff really. But it was just that it was there, and it was never ever questioned and never looked at in a cross-cultural perspective, and how tattooing's used cross-culturally. So you're already by then losing a whole perspective on what tattooing's about.
Yeah, because
um
I always thought, coming from sociology myself, and I saw this as well when it's just started my undergrad. I always thought that, especially within psychology and psychiatry, there was this very heavily negatively biased way of
yeah,
looking at tattoos,
definitely.
and sociology was not always the best there either. But they
Yeah,
just tended a bit earlier on than psychology might have started doing it to be like, hey, why don't we leave the bias behind and try and look into some of these things? But
exactly.
there have been some psychologists that did it early on as well. Like oh, I struggle to remember her name right now. Sadly, I'm so bad with names sometimes. She did a cool book that was about skin or something like that. I can't remember what it was
Right.
called.
Oh, no, I can't remember.
I
I
can't
know
remember her
Viren
name.
Swami did some,
Yeah,
um,
but there
and
was some that did
it's
so
great.
that early on did some stuff that went
Yeah,
against the grain, so to speak, and looked at tattoos from a less negatively biased place. But
yeah.
even today, you still get people that
Oh,
come
yeah.
into it from even in the social sciences and go like, no, this is just people being sick and they're just
Oh, God,
try,
yeah.
and it's such a shame because at least I would say the prevailing voice is starting to be to recognize the positive impact tattoos have on
Yeah,
people's sense of self. At
yeah,
least, I mean, that's at
definitely.
least the thing I very much try to champion in anything I do, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of different ways to do tattoos.
Yeah, definitely.
But I would
And
say most ways where you freely and with your own agency get into
yeah,
it, there's
yeah,
some sort of positive impact it can at least potentially have on yourself.
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
Because I mean, even I, especially now that I'm not no longer bound by the constraints of academic politics, there are some trends where even I'm like, you really should think before you start
Oh
this,
God, yeah,
because
totally.
there's I fully agree with the idea from tattoo artists and collectors often, especially when you're in the community like you and I are as well, that they don't need deep meaning
Yeah,
tattoos.
oh God, no,
No,
no.
but it does help, but also a personal connection is needed. Like
Yeah,
you do need to connect with that. It can't just be like, oh no, we were just at a party and we just slammed this on the wrist and
yeah,
then
oh
just
God, yeah, I can't
the
imagine that.
even ignoring the hygienic dangers and medical
Yeah.
problems that could come up from that. That's the thing, and I spoke to Matt Davis, the shrink, about this a bit as
Mm,
well from psychiatry and his perspective. And
mhm,
even he was the same, where I was like, yeah, I mean, yeah, of course they don't need to have deep meaning and they could just be fun. And especially when you collect more and you
mhm.
get more into it, like you and I am, you kind of learn
Yeah,
your limits. You already have an experience of being tattooed, so you know you can handle that when
yeah,
walking around the
definitely.
streets and all that. But it's also, you also know what you like, and you go out and get something that at least
Yeah,
statistically you have a connection with.
yeah, definitely. And I don't know if this is the same for you, but for me, I used to feel like I used to look at some of my tattoos, my earlier ones, and I would look at them and go, do you know, that some of them aren't, they're not done perfectly, and I can see some errors with them and things like that. But they're still mine, and I still love them, and I wouldn't
Yeah.
change them. And so it was like I mean, I wouldn't change them, but I did change them. But that was a more around me changing as well. But kind of that thing there where you come to love them and identify like the deep meaning develops even if it wasn't there
Ah,
initially, if that makes sense.
absolutely. I think it was actually Michael that said this to me once on a Zoom meeting I had for a society I started at one point called the Institute Academics. If any academics are listening
Ah,
out there,
yes.
but uh, it might have been him that said it. It might have been somebody else. But somebody talked about how that meaning is not static with tattoos either, and that can change too.
Yeah, definitely.
And something that didn't have much meaning can gain meaning. Something that had one meaning can have another meaning later in life.
Exactly.
It doesn't just have that diary effect that everybody loves to quote Johnny Depp for.
Yes.
Even though I would say Johnny, even if he came up with it himself, there have been social scientists that said that before he did.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Chief among them, one of my favorites, Paul Sweetman, already talked about the anchoring effect and the biographical idea taken from Giddens about how to sort of anchor these biographical moments about and all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
But that's the whole thing. Like same thing for me. I had some earlier tattoos. I started out on my chest, and I just
Hmm.
all try. Like one of them's cooler done, a bit cooler tribal, where it's
Yeah.
like bladed and all sorts of. The other was just traditional, like done by a former biker. Like I think
Yeah.
she was at least. Tribal on this side with a yang in the middle,
Mhm.
because I have a twin brother that has the other half of that
Oh,
old
class.
thing, and they're not the best done. At least not the first one, which was the Yang
Yeah.
one. But I haven't regretted them,
Yeah, exactly.
because I very much thought it through and knew what I wanted. I think that's important sometimes for youngsters with the first one,
Yeah.
to like think it through. Even if you're not gonna think through the image, think through how will it
Yeah.
be being tattooed? How are you going to start out?
Oh
How are you
God,
going to
yeah.
commit to this? Because that's another thing I see, and I don't know how you are. I suspect from your own collection you might have the same opinion as me on this, but also get fed up with youngsters that start out with a tiny one on the wrist or a tiny one somewhere else, because that's not really. It may sound daft to people that are not tattooed, like me and Becky, for the listeners that aren't tattooed, but that's not really being tattooed. It is a tattoo,
No.
absolutely, and it can be very meaningful to people that get it, but it's not the same.
There's
It is
something
not.
different about sitting there for a really long period, or
Oh,
I imagine, a lot of the sort of cultural practices around tattooing and the more ceremonial experiences. There's something different about that, I guess, where it's not just you're in and out in 10 minutes and yeah. I guess different ways of connecting for different people and things. But yeah.
No, absolutely. But there's also, it might be the sociology talking here, but there's also the whole idea of stigma. Where
Yes.
even in countries like Denmark, where I personally, and this is my opinion, so if people hate it, fine. It's just my own personal experience and friends I know. There's a ocean between having a little itty tattoo somewhere, or a few of them, and then being sleeved up or neck tattoos and stuff like that. Even in the UK, I would argue there's still a vast difference there, where nobody really bats an eyelid at a little tiny wrist tattoo or a little tiny finger tattoo or something like
Yes.
that. But when you really commit,
Yeah. Yeah, there's
it's a
still
different
something
experience.
different, isn't there, about when it's on your neck, your hands, or your face. There's still a bit of that, even though it's becoming more popular in the UK,
Mm.
but there's that different, I guess, almost like a line. I'm not sure I'm not sure I totally get it myself, but some people see it as like, oh well, I can understand in your arms, but on your hands, no way. That's a line that you've crossed, and but maybe that's just because I've crossed that line. I don't know.
I mean, that it's the same thing for you would absolutely. I think you would absolutely love to talk to Matt. By the way, Matt Davis, Matt Lotter, you already have talked to, but this
Yes,
is another Matt that's also even more tattooed than I think both you and Matt Lotter put together, almost, which says
excellent.
a lot because both you and Matt are extensively.
Yeah.
But Matt Davis has one of the most beautiful bodysuits I've ever seen. But we talked about it, me and him as well, that he also come from psychiatry, but having read a bit up as we do in social sciences, from other sciences as well, and psychology and all that, that it was also a thing he wondered about this idea, and we had a little chat about it with this boundary people see where it's like, oh yeah, you have a sleeve, we can sort of be okay with that, but don't you dare, don't you
Yeah,
dare go beneath the wrist or above the
exactly.
neckline. It's very strange, right? Because the face, that's a separate category where, okay, fair enough. Some of us get, even though we can find it beautiful in other people, we get that step of
Mhm.
going into where the personality, so to speak,
Yeah, that's a
is
good point.
communicated in a way. Even though I still think face tattoos shouldn't give any doubt about people's character either. They can be
Yeah,
absolutely gorgeous on people. But we talked about me and Matt a bit about this idea that it sort of pushes people's own comfortability about the world, the idea of the world they have. Like
right.
it's sort of a. I think I agree with Matt Davis actually to an extent here. It's sort of a jealousy as well. There's sort
That's a
of an
good point.
envy as well of us daring to say, well, we know that this, and we know we can be stigmatized for it, but
Hmm.
we want this. Like we don't feel complete in a way
Yeah,
without sort of claiming this existence.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think that's a good point. Yeah.
But I also wondered before starting, because one of your main interests, if I remember correctly, and please correct me if I remember wrong, because
It's
it
all
would be
right.
embarrassing, but it's important to do. But you're very interested in male mental health, right?
Yes, yes, I do male
I
psychology. Yeah.
imagine you would run into tattoos there as well sometimes.
Oh God, yeah, totally. I don't see the two as being mutually exclusive at all. Um, I haven't branched into looking at it myself, but I do chat because I'm an evolutionary psychologist from background. I struggle to think of things without being in that evolutionary type of framework. And I work with some other evolutionary psychologists, Dan and Mark, and we've had these conversations about the role of tattooing as like costly signals and why it would be perceived different in men and women, and the placements are different for men and women usually, and the role of like intersexual competition, intrasexual competition, and things like that. Yeah, I definitely love that, and I would love to be able to do some proper research on that at some point. If I ever get brain space, I will absolutely do that.
Yeah, that's the big. I mean, with an academic at your level, there is that such a thing as finding the mental capacity as well
I
for
don't
adding
have
another
even
project.
even like space in me brain to sleep at the minute.
I did fascinating enough. I thought of you when I first read this because I tried to read as much as I could, even when I was trying to like figure out can I actually do this PhD. And one of the papers I found was one talking about working class male identity and tattoos. And I
Oh,
sadly
right.
can't remember because I'm shite with memory. It's probably one of the reasons I don't do well at the PhD level, because academic recollection is not my
I don't know, mind you, you've said a load today.
but it was sort of talking about this idea of like the old school. It was done in Britain. So they talked about this, old school working class dad with the last name tattoos or football teams and all that sort of stuff, and how they connect and all. So I can't remember who actually did it or what sciences they used, but if I remember correctly, it was sort of psychology and sociology adjacent.
Yeah.
And talking a lot about the masculine identity.
Oh, that's interesting.
But also
that's
how,
really interesting.
if I remember correctly, there was some points about how it wouldn't at all have the same impact if they hadn't sort of agreed on this language in the tattoos they had.
Yes.
But this was very much tattoos done for the purpose of other people's opinion.
Yes.
Whereas I would argue with people like you and me, a lot of our tattoos are done mainly with our own sense of self in mind.
Yeah, I would argue the same. I think there's a difference there. Like part of the different motivations as to, fitting your own sort of narrative and displaying your own identity in an individual way versus in a more, I guess, a group identity, maybe shared identity.
Yeah, I think because I do get that, and sometimes it works out. Like there's a book I read once, the author of which is perhaps a bit problematic nowadays, but it was a book done, a beautiful photography book done about the Royal Guard in Denmark and how they were in Afghanistan and their tattoos.
Yes.
And I very much agree in certain exceptions, I would call it. Certain group identities, like if you've been in the army, if you've been a firefighter, if you've been part of certain groups like this where they form these almost familial bonds that last them the rest of their lives.
Yes.
It can work out.
Yeah.
But if you've got a tequila bottle on your calf because you went to Ibiza with your lads,
yeah, exactly,
or your girls, that may not hold up.
yeah, exactly.
If you get it and you later reflect on it and it's just a fun story, it's gonna hold up possibly.
Yeah.
But if you get it because that's just bonding and all that, no, that's
exactly. I can totally get that.
Though I do feel a bit guilty saying that, because I have been very close to getting some weird tattoos at conventions now and then where you befriend the right people,
Oh, I've been there and done that as well.
Though I am certainly, without asking you, with how you've been at the scene more than me, that you've done that, Becci.
Done that, yeah.
Also, having followed you on Instagram, which to say the least can be quite entertaining sometimes.
Good.
There is the odd pop posts and nighttime that get very entertaining on Becci's Instagram.
Definitely.
Your man as well is quite tattooed as well, right?
He's only got a couple. He's only got a couple. Yeah, right. He's got
I reckon so wrong there.
He's got 3 tattoos. You might be looking at my best friend, Adam.
Oh, might have
He's
been the one.
very tattooed. Yes.
Oh, right. Well,
yeah.
So your man's only got 3.
Yeah.
What? Okay, now that I had this is an opportunity that I didn't think would present itself today, but I have been quite curious, and I hope this doesn't sound wrong, but you know how you get sometimes with tattooed people, and I'm firmly in the category. What is it with, especially I feel sometimes women, because it used to be something men did a lot, I think, especially in the 90s, that you would see heavily tattooed guys, and they were like, no, my girlfriend can't have any tattoos, that's a male thing. Because I know it's not that sort of mentality from women that do it. It seems way less antagonistic or like reverse misogyny or anything like that. I don't know what you would call it. When very heavily tattooed women date men without tattoos. But what do you think of this? Because you see it more and more often. And I have my own theory, so to speak. But I was wondering what you might think about it now.
That's a really interesting idea. You know, I'd never even thought about it before, but I guess when I first met him, and we've been together about 15 years now, I was considered heavily tattooed for that time, but obviously it was different back then. So I had like a half sleeve, I had a half sleeve, and I think that was probably it that was visible, because then I got my chest done much later. But so. And he didn't have any when I met him, so there was already that difference then. And I know, when I was doing my PhD and things, he was worried about us getting more tattooed in case I couldn't get a job and things like that. So he was a bit hesitant about that. But then, yeah, it's never been an issue for us, I guess. I've never thought about it. But I notice when he talks about potentially getting tattoos, this is going to sound really horrible, but he looks a bit at like more sort of chavvy type of tattoos. If that makes any sense. To me and my friend, my best mate Adam, we kind of have a laugh about it and go like, "Oh, that's definitely a Carl tattoo, that one, isn't it?" And you're like, "Oh yeah, definitely." He doesn't really look at, I guess, the more individual aspects, like we were just talking about, the much more individual identity versus a sort of shared or cultural identity. But he does get. I don't even know what he does. He's got such a. He's only got three, but they're a right little mishmash. Like he's got like some sort of like a rock, the Rock inspired from years ago
Oh,
along
boy.
here, and it didn't really go well. But then he's
Oh,
got this like, oh yeah, it's been done by four different people, I think, trying to fix it over different times. He's got a massive phoenix on his leg, but our daughter's middle name's Phoenix, and that's why that is, and it's beautiful and it's really lovely and colourful.
all right.
And then he's got a portrait of Floki off of the Vikings on his forearm,
Oh. May I say
a
it's a
black and white one.
Scandinavian man, even though he's actually played by a Scandinavian man.
Yes.
I hate that character.
Oh dear.
No, I never got into Vikings. Never.
Oh, did you know? I loved it.
You're gonna love an episode that will come out at some point. But no, the timing on this when this finally comes out sometimes next year. But
Excellent.
I did interview a Danish man living in Whitley Bay, who's a very famous tattooer by now, called Northern Oak or something like that. Black
Right.
Oak. I can't remember what it's called. Northern Black, yeah, but it's Peter. Well, sorry, that's the Danish pronunciation. Peter Oakman.
Right. Okay.
Very cool guy, ginger like me, big beard, shaped this up, but very cool guy. But he's an expert on Nordic and Celtic tattoos.
That is so interesting.
Enough so that he even did himself, because he was tired of this Viking fascination and how it's misappropriated sometimes by people, especially in the fitness culture sometimes.
Yes.
And by neo-Nazis quite often.
Oh, really?
That he did a series called "You're Not a Viking" on Instagram. It was
That's
actually
so
quite
interesting.
great. And we talked about a bit about that. Very lovely guy, if you ever get to talk to him. Very,
that
very
is
lovely
so interesting. I have to say, as a caveat, mind, I've got Ragnar Lothbrok on my arm.
That's
but
right.
it's the character.
Just a fun fact about where he's actually from.
Yes.
It is flat as a fucking pancake. Yeah, they filmed it like there was mountains there. Clearly in Norway.
God.
Denmark's flat, man.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never been to Denmark. I would like to go to Denmark.
Strike one. No.
I would definitely like to go, but I
this
love
friendship's not taking off, Becky. Now. No, but it's interesting because there are a lot of fandom tattoos and a lot of Viking tattoos, but I mind fandom tattoos of the Viking series less, like Peter would do as well, I think, to some extent, than people that get the wrong kind of actual Nordic or Viking tattoo.
Yes, that makes sense.
Or at least who don't know what it is, because as Peter will tell you and as Matt Lotter will tell you as well, both of them, there's no actual proof that Vikings had tattoos. We have something that talks of it, and as Peter would tell you, we fucking hope it's true, because it would fit into the culture at the time. It would make sense for Vikings to be tattooed, but we don't have any actual proof they were tattooed, or what kind of tattoos they had. We don't have any idea.
Exactly. Yeah.
So a lot of people get these Viking and Nordic tattoos that are actually invented much later on.
Yeah, exactly. They're not actually yeah, exactly. And it's like that misappropriation you mentioned. And I remember talking to I don't know how you pronounce her name, Maya Sayaluk.
Oh, Maya Sayaluk.
Yeah,
right. And Inuit.
Yes, exactly. And
fantastic.
she talked a lot about misappropriation of tattoos as well. And I thought, I'd never thought about it until I spoke to her. And like in the 90s when everyone got the black spiky tribal tattoos and things, and you go, oh yeah, it's a tribal tattoo, and you're like, what tribe? Where's that come from? Like, where's
I always hated that experience, because I have one actual tribal tattoo, and before anybody starts on me, it was done by a formerly very famous female artist from California. She sadly died in 2020, not COVID related, but heart problems at the age of 52, called Erica from America. But Erica was half Japanese, half Polynesian. And before she died, she did a massive Polynesian piece on me here.
That's amazing.
Which she asked me if she could do. And I was so nervous as a young sociologist at the time. I was like, this can't be cultural appropriation. Like, it looks so cool.
Honestly,
but you've got to promise me.
But
as you talked about, and Peter, I've talked to other people about it since. The thing is, when I know where it's from, when I know some of the history of it, when I'm not doing it in any way that just claims it as my culture or anything like that.
Yes.
It seems a bit more right. And also I got it by a Polynesian woman.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so it makes more sense.
It may not have been in an old school shamanistic way. It was done with machine and stuff like that. But there's still, I haven't just gone to some white dude in outskirts of Copenhagen and been like, hey, can we copy the rock?
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. I look at him now and I'm like.
And also, as I would say, I would never, for example, take anything that's sacred to a culture. Like I would never get the moko. Like
I wouldn't. And at one point
to the Maori, like
at one point I did feel like when I got this done, I felt like I wanted something that went down here. And like then once I learned more about that, and after speaking with Maya, I was like, I will never get that done. In case.
The position is fine, but you can't take it's the same reason it's not my style to get that either, but it's the same reason I would never get the Samoan, like the way they tattoo the thighs and that.
You
would never do that because that's something that is specifically sacred to their culture. And I think cultural appropriation is very much be from what the people of the culture say, hey, to this point we can share, and then that's it exactly. And I would hate to have ever done something that I later find out was misappropriated, something that I hadn't known about, and then I'm definitely not removing my tattoo because I'm an atheist myself, but it's still a memory of my friend that died.
Definitely.
I'll be very hard pressed, even if it ever became a problem to remove that tattoo, because it was also one of it was the last big piece she ever did, almost so there's some value to it.
God, yeah, definitely.
But to return to something else you were talking about earlier, you mentioned very briefly, but it's actually one of the main reasons I invited you in. So it's very cool. But we talked a bit about your tattooing and how you started out on your academic career. Were there a lot of worries when you did that? What came first, actually? Did you go into your undergrad before starting to tattoo, or did you get tattooed before you started your undergrad?
Well, I got my first tattoo. I was 16, so I've always had that. Yeah, and I guess at the time, because no one else really did it, it was a bit weird and a bit shocking, I guess. Even though you look back, and if you looked at people sort of say 18. Who had those kinds of tattoos now, it wouldn't be a big deal at all, but it was back then. And I started my undergraduate degree when I was 21, and I only had a couple of small tattoos on my arm and one on my back, and it wasn't until I think I started my PhD when I started getting more heavily tattooed. And I think it has held us back in some places and at some points. I know there was people who were above us at the time who had expressed concerns about it for sure. And just because I'm stubborn, I guess I'd been like, no, just dug my feet in and refused to conform the way that they maybe wanted us to at the time.
No, but I get that. I mean, despite how both indirectly and directly, sometimes I was warned when I did my master's degree in Copenhagen about the tattoos and how that might look when teaching undergrads, or when thinking of an academic career in the future. I always was like, well, if I'm really smart and clever, should it really matter? Like I said to Matt Davis, I've yet to see any science that's peer reviewed and a proof that suggests that tattoos slips your IQ points. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Like,
the ink eats your brain or something.
No, never heard of that. Like, never
No.
heard of anything like that. Even with head tattoos, where it's like, no, that definitely gave you something that siphoned off some of your brain
Yeah,
cells.
exactly.
Like, so that's why I found it weird. And I've always been of the mind that if it's weird and doesn't make sense, then why adhere to it?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I liken it
Exactly.
to traffic rules, where I'm like, well, it makes sense that we have rules for these weapons that are
Yeah,
motorized and around the street, because it prevents us from dying unnecessarily.
exactly. Exactly.
but
That
but
stuff
having
makes
rules
sense,
about
but
how people look doesn't make sense, because you don't
yeah,
die from how people look or get hurt. You
exactly.
can get
Exactly.
offended, but that's a very personal feeling, getting offended about stuff.
Exactly. And when people like sort of form, initial opinions, and they're informed by stereotypes, and it's like, yeah, but where did those stereotypes come from, and what kind of misinformation had gone into that? Like we talked about the history of psychology research in a tattooing and things. It's like
Oh, that's
it's
been
not an
so
accurate
much there.
stereotype.
Oh,
Yeah.
psychiatry, even worse in this psychiatry, when you look back at some of the
Oh,
studies
yeah.
back then, was like, oh, you have a tattoo. I remember reading a study, which was not even that old. I think it was 2010.
Oh my
It's
God.
about 2009. And it's just said, if you have a tattoo, you either are or are thinking about becoming a delinquent, criminal, or deviant. It's like,
That's amazing.
that is weird as fuck, because people don't think about becoming any of those things. It's usually other
Can you
people
imagine that? Just
defining
well,
you
I've
as that.
I've got my tattoo now. What should I do? Deviance, criminality.
Well, it's like going down to the S&M club. It's going to
Let's go and blow it up as well. We'll just hit all of those boxes.
you just feel the gimp mask crawling up over your face.
Exactly. Like the venom on.
Oh man. Well, that would be something else. But it is a lot of stuff you find like that. And I think that's also why you tend to, I mean, no matter how comfortable I got in Glasgow, for example, as well, I
Mhm,
still tried to be somewhat mindful of it at times.
mhm.
Because we were very positive, and even though some people would sometimes tell me, "Hey, don't worry about it. You can
Yeah,
be tattooed here." There was also
yeah,
some times where it definitely pulled in the other direction.
yeah,
Like, for
yeah,
example, I went
definitely.
on walks at the University of Glasgow, and very sweetly, this woman who sort of was responsible for people running the walks, at one point told me that I have to be mindful that there are international students there like me who are from cultures where it's very much still looked down upon tattoos
Yeah,
and all that,
yeah. I
and I
can't
have to
get
be
my
more
head
careful
around
there.
it. Yeah.
But I always thought, and I feel very happy that I can see this more freely now. But I always
Mhm.
found it weird that, okay, so people come to the culture and this is better not sound wrong, because I'm very much a person that thinks that borders should be abolished and we should all just fucking live where we want to be. Like, we just
Yeah.
preface it with that. But that being said, I always find it weird that we shouldn't all have the readiness to experience other cultures, whether you're the one moving to somewhere, whether you're the one moving away from somewhere. Like,
Yes.
or welcoming people in. Because the thing is, I moved to Glasgow. I didn't
Mhm.
demand people respect my Danishness constantly. I made it
Yeah.
clear sometimes if something was different and said, hey, this is why I react like this. For example, I hug a lot. The Danish people just don't have the same aversion to to touch that English people,
Yeah.
especially, may
Oh
have at
God, yeah.
times. Um,
Yeah.
and certain things that might be viewed as heavily flirty in the UK is way more like, oh, that's just something you do if you get even talking to people just friendly
Yeah. Yeah,
sometimes.
exactly.
And I had to
Yeah.
think about that. But it's also with tattoos. But funny enough, one of the only people from one of the cultures that really feel strongly about them at times, Japan, uh,
Oh yeah.
he
Yeah.
was not, it didn't even give him pause that I was
Oh,
in a
brilliant.
tank top with my tattoos out.
Excellent.
But I also not even think about it twice either. But there are
Yeah.
people from certain cultures, often very religiously
Yeah. Yeah.
heavy cultures that are
Yeah.
still very much offended by it.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like sometimes when people ask us, well, like, how do people respond to your tattoos and stuff? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I ask them. I cannot tell.
But that's what I'm wondering about, because you're now head of psychology and have been
Yeah.
it for a fair bit now,
Yeah.
at least enough to get your teeth wet, as we might say in Denmark.
Yes.
Um, does it ever give you any problems with foreign students or other students that you're that heavily tattooed?
Not that I know of, unless they've got a massive problem with it and no one
There's been
they
no
don't tell
complaints
us.
in the HR box.
Not that I know of. But I mean, for years, well, when tattoos were a little bit less common and that, and people, if you were out and people would look at you and stuff, and it was something I never noticed. It was the people who I was with would notice. I think I'm
Well,
just
I've
shit
always
at
been a bit
noticing
more
that.
picky, been a bit more sensitive to that. I very much notice, and people
Oh, I'm
sometimes
terrible
ask,
at it.
and I think you can support me in this though, even though you
Yeah.
may not notice it. You can tell if it's a look of positive curiosity
Oh,
or a look of
yeah.
division. It's not difficult. I
Yeah.
mean, I hate especially when women say, "Can you really tell?" Because I'm like, okay, so you can't tell when men look at you and like just look at
Yeah.
you, or when they look at you.
Yeah.
like,
Oh, yeah,
like
definitely. If you notice
women
that look, you can
especially
tell the
with the
type.
way you've been treated in the world, there's no
Yeah.
woman that wouldn't know the difference between different looks. I would argue. You guys have a sixth sense of that, but I as well, a lot of evidence to people, you sort of start noticing, oh, that was the guy that just found them cool and he just looked at it, or that was a woman that
Yeah.
found it highly offensive, and others are very overt. Like especially this last summer, I had an old lady hide her bag when I walked by
Oh my God, that's unreal.
in Copenhagen, and that's in a massive metropolitan city, and I'm walking by with my mate who's not that tattooed. He's got one,
Yeah.
and you can't see at that time, but she just, as soon as we came walking down, and he noticed it as well, my mate, he just went under the
Oh
jacket with
my
that
God,
bag
that's
and just
unreal.
stared at me as I walked by, and then just turned around and said very loudly to her, "Woman, I'm more highly educated than your snot-nosed grandkids. I don't want your mangy purse."
Keep it.
Absolutely wrong color.
However, do you have it in black?
but I'm very happy to say, and I think this is cool to show off as well, that at least in the UK setting, which is the only other one I'm familiar with, that there is this, and I experienced it myself. Generally speaking, there is just less of a problem with
Yeah.
having to do, because I saw a lot of academics, teachers, and
Yeah.
that when they tried to do my PhD in Glasgow, that were quite tattooed.
Yeah,
Like, it was
definitely.
not strange to see a STEM professor with a fucking sleeve or something like that.
Yeah, and it's great. It is great to see.
Absolutely, because it's not just that. I think it often then expands onto other things.
Hmm.
When you accept tattoos, then it also becomes like, oh yeah, you can wear that fun shirt, or you can wear this
Yeah.
cool outfit, or you can, because that's the same thing. It doesn't, like, hypothetically speaking, even though I do get some dress code is necessary, I
Yeah.
guess,
Yeah.
but you should be able to teach in a Speedo if you want to, because
Yeah.
it's about what comes out your gob rather than
Yeah.
comes out,
For sure. For
like,
sure.
rather than what you wear.
Exactly.
That's also why it's very nice to see when Matt Lotter's doing talks sometimes that are not in crowds that are already tattoo fans,
Hmm.
and you see the respect he gets sometimes in that, because it's nice, because Matt's quite heavily tattooed himself, and
Yeah, he
a
is.
couple in the face as well, and that. It's
Hmm.
nice to see that people actually respect his historical know-how
Yeah,
and
that's
knowledge,
true.
because it's quite vast, not just on
Oh
tattoos. He
God,
knows
yeah.
quite a lot of stuff.
Yeah, he's a very clever man, for sure.
He makes you feel bad about yourself sometimes,
I does,
just with how he recollects stuff and all that.
Yeah.
I think, but with you as well, see some of the pictures where I can't remember what honors you got, but it might have been from when you actually got the position at the ceremony. That, but it looks very nice. And me as a us as tattoo people are probably biased. So we just see you getting that and just look fluffy and
Yeah,
all that. We just wonder how it looks to other people,
that's
because
true.
you
Yeah.
are very much in that picture where you get to like whatever it was, the only tattooed person visibly in the
Yeah,
screen.
that's a good point, actually. See, again,
And you're
like
also the only
you
one
just
with
don't
like
look at it.
I find your hair colors, for example, quite awesome. I can't remember which one you had at that point because I don't remember. But
Yeah.
you also have, a certain hairstyle and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
I think some people, especially in the academic sense, are warming up to how this gives us confidence claiming our
Yes.
own space in our bodies. So luckily, hopefully this doesn't make anyone feel self-conscious, but it still makes you think, sometimes about the old times, and
yeah.
is it really getting that much different sometimes?
Yeah.
Because you see it especially among the students, but it's still not. Despite how some people phrase it at times, every other professor that has a tattoo or every other professor that has a
Yeah.
piercing or anything like that, it's still a minority of people.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd imagine
Highly up in
so.
the
Yeah.
academics.
Yeah.
Less so than before. Very much less
Yes.
so than before.
Yeah, that's it.
Luckily
Yeah.
so. Which
Yeah.
you can also see for anybody that ever picks up any old sociology books or tattoo history books, anything like that. They often like to document how they may not have had tattoos at first, but then they researched it and then suddenly they just got started.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Which I very much think that's just how it is sometimes. If you
Yeah, it
actually
can
look
be.
into it, if you actually look into tattoos and what they are, a lot of people suddenly, as we say in Denmark, get blood in their teeth and they sort of smell the blood in the water and they want to get
Yeah.
into it,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
What was your last tattoo you got?
Have you seen Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
Yes.
Do you know the episode where they have the school reunion and they do the dance at the end and
Yeah.
Mac rips his shirt off?
Yeah.
It's that.
I do like
Yeah.
that because Always Sunny in Philadelphia tattoos tend to be the rum ham or something
Yeah,
like that,
exactly. Yeah, I got Fat
which
Mac.
is a class tattoo as well. But I do like that you got Mac ribbing his shirt off.
Yep, and it looks like a stained glass window type.
Wait,
Yeah.
was that? I'm just gonna try and guess the artist because you said that. Mother's Ruin.
Yep.
I have a very cool picture she did of Bill Murray. I bought at the Scottish Tattoo Convention.
Ah, yes. Yep, that was
Very
her.
awesome print where she's thrown in all these Easter eggs to different movies she's been in and all that.
Oh, that's so cool.
And he's in a
So
knight's
cool.
armor.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. I've seen
Yeah,
it.
I bought the
Yeah.
small version of that print. Couldn't help myself.
Yes. It's brilliant. It's
Dead
brilliant.
cheap as well. She's very lovely. Very weirded out by how much I nerded out about it. But I think, other than
I love
that,
it.
I hope it wasn't a terrible experience for her talking to me.
I'm sure it wasn't.
I tend to think more harshly on how I rock people, I think,
Oh,
than they do. I do
oh,
think I've pissed off Beth Rose, but that's a whole other matter.
bless.
Merely by staring too much, and not even because she is a very beautiful woman. Not because of that, just because I was like, it's Beth Rose, and I got to talk to her about a tattoo I wanted, and I
Oh,
really
bless.
love her art style.
Yeah. You just did a fangirl at her.
And then I just kept, after talking to her about the tattoo, looking whenever I came by, and I was just, fuck.
Shit.
She just pretended I was looking at Daryl Watson
Oh, yeah.
next to her.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fun, talking to another academic that also knows some of these names as well.
Yeah.
Because that
Yeah.
doesn't always happen, even with tattooed academics. Because that's another thing I think people don't realize. Among academics, that it's sort of becoming its own subculture sometimes. Sort of its own little group of people, tattooed academics. Because it's not all of them that are like you and me, where it's very much like other heavily tattooed people, where it's like, oh, I got this weird one done because I like this obscure TV show, or I got this one done because I love the art and that. A lot of other academics are way more in tune to tying it in, I think.
Yes.
To their science.
Yeah. Yeah.
As an example, and she might come on the show, the podcast at one point, but there's a woman called Leia. I can't remember her last name. She's gnarly by nature on Instagram. She's a STEM scientist and STEM advocate and all that. I think it's really cool what she does. But she has a full sleeve that all has to do with like STEM and like the scientific field and all that.
Yeah.
It is really cool, but I think that's more often what you see.
Yeah.
On academics in any field, as it gets more popular, they're like, oh, I like this, so I'm gonna do that. And within certain fields like psychology or psychiatry, they're very like, they're concepts that already have like art or like drawings to them and all that. Within sociology, I found nothing.
Mine are just random.
I would love to get a sociology tattoo one day. I found nothing that's like an easy to recognize.
Yeah.
So I'm making up my own one day. But
yeah, exactly.
But that's the thing. I feel a lot of academics, more so than any other sort of profession, very much get tattoos to do with what they do.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's part of your identity, um,
Mm.
demonstrating your identity. Me sister's a chemistry teacher and she's got a cat. I don't even know how you say this word, a cat iron on our arm. So it's got like little positive charges on it, and then it's got some,
Ah.
I think it's got like a little like science flask or something like that. And she laughs about it and has the kids going, well, how do you remember this? And then I don't know if you pronounce it like cation or something like that, but it's said cat, it's spelled
We're
cat
clearly
iron.
neither of us are STEM, clearly.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, I not a clue.
I don't mess with beakers and they don't mess with me.
No, 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 no. I'll leave that to her.
Mm. No, but that's exactly it. I think it's oh, I love mentioning this, and people it might become my catchphrase. But as a proud son of a plumber,
Yeah,
you don't see many, carpenters or plumbers or electricians that get stuff to do with a profession. That there are some,
mm.
but there's not a lot of plumbers that run around with a lock wrench down their arm or
Yeah,
something like that. There will definitely be some. I will venture a guess there will absolutely be some that do that,
yeah,
but not to the same extent that you see with people that do stuff similar to us in academia, where they very much identify strongly with what they do
yes,
in a sense. And even though they do, a lot of contractors identify very strongly with what they do, they tend to have almost, I would say, a different set of rules for what they get to do.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense. Yeah,
Just fascinating.
yeah. It is. It is
What would you get
interesting.
if you were going to get a psychology tattoo?
Well, I did used to have one, but
Oh,
I'd started lasering it off there. Um,
ah,
but I've started lasering them about 5 years ago now, and I need to just get them finished up now, really. But I would get the same thing again, the little psychology symbol. But other than that, nah, nothing I can think of to do with
nah,
psychology.
it's fun being tattooed.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I've got, yeah, random fan type things, I guess, mainly. Have
You
I?
guess.
I guess I'm trying to think. I can't even. I end up just getting things that I think look pretty at the
Mm.
time, and
That's the thing,
mm,
like, but I also think, as we talked about earlier, when you are more experienced being tattooed, you also get a greater sense of what you really like.
yeah, definitely.
So it becomes a bit safer to go in and
Yeah.
be like, oh, I just love what this artist did. So I'm just gonna
Oh,
get
yeah,
that.
that's it. That's it. Like I just want to find artists whose work I like and go just do something that'll
Yeah.
fit here. I
Oh,
like
that's
your
what I'm trying
stuff.
to do with this annoying cat
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do ultimately with these fingers. I'm going to Leicester in
Mm.
January to just get them done. I'm like, I
Oh,
like that
Leicester.
stuff. Yeah, yeah.
Not up the black country.
No. Um,
Oh no. You want to be able to understand what this is.
I would be helpful.
Uh, I mean, I have a mate from Leicester that he tried to teach me, he is from the black country, and he tried to teach me that yama yama. I can't even do it. It sounds like they say the same two syllables over and over again.
Sounds like where I'm from.
Ah man, where is that?
Peterlee.
No, no recall. No,
No,
none at
you're
all.
not missing much. Like,
No, I wouldn't imagine so. As much as you're great at massive cities in the UK, you're also absolutely great at little holes in the ground that people live in.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Like you'll just turn a corner sometimes and it's a wee village.
Oh God, yeah, yeah. I love the little villages. I'm like, can I just go and live in the middle of nowhere, or with like a tiny few people in a tiny little hamlet or something? I
I mean,
don't
if
want
you
to
like
live
the
in a big
gas
place.
mileage, then the pet if you don't mind paying the petrol,
Okay, can the prices come back down a bit, please, so we can afford it?
oh, that's oh, let's not start talking Brexit. They'll just make you as a British person break out into hives and make people switch off the podcast if we
Yeah,
talk
well, it
Brexit
will.
right now. It does come up, but that's also because it made me have to move out of Glasgow. I mean,
Yeah,
for one,
yeah.
but yeah, but also made tattoo conventions more difficult, as
Oh
far as I
God,
heard,
yeah,
because people have
yeah.
a more difficult time actually coming to conventions from outside of the UK.
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
they're figuring it out, but it's still, you know,
Yeah, it's really
it's not as
hard.
easy, you know.
No, it's
And
not.
some may need visas now and all that sort of stuff. And
It's awful.
yeah, I mean, I think we should kill that beast there.
Yeah, we'll put a plug in that one.
What do you think is the science you've met the most people in that are tattoo?
Mm.
Who do you think takes the cake?
So the most tattooed science person.
No, not science person. Oh, that'll be way easier.
Science discipline.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say psychology, if you consider psychology as science.
I mean, I am very much of the opinion that we are in the social sciences.
Uh-huh.
We do have methods and rigor and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
I agree I would say we're
Yeah.
science. I bet some STEM people are going to get very annoyed with me at
Oh
that.
yeah, definitely. My sister's one of them. She's like, it's not a
But
science, and I'm like, well, it is. So
it is methodology, everything.
yeah,
But I agree. I think the social sciences, psychology, perhaps maybe more than any, takes the cake a bit there.
Yeah, I think
But
so.
I would say in engineering as well, you see a fair few people, in my experience,
That's a good point.
that
Yeah.
attitude as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it started off with some of those NASA guys you started seeing that are like aerospace engineers, and you just started noticing, oh, they have tattoos. Well, there must be a good salary at NASA, so of course they might have tattoos, you know?
Yes,
and then
exactly.
then I think a lot of scientists started seeing that, oh, but they're from the most prestigious place and they have tattoos. So I can have tattoos as well. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I think that's often what happens. I mean, you would probably agree with this as a psychologist, but I think that's often what happens with young people that want careers and they are iffy about, can I do this with a tattoo? And then they meet one person or a few people that are in the career and have tattoos, and then they started seeing that, oh, well, okay.
Yeah, I think that's a thing. Yeah, definitely.
Like I personally, in my undergrad, I had 3 tattoos when I started mine. At 20, I just looked at the calendar, 13 years ago. And I remember that it was so freeing for me when I met my first teacher that not only had tattoos, because I only met 2 ever at my undergrad that had it, at least quite visibly, but this guy had a full bodysuit, quite a cool Irasumi style bodysuit. And then one time, because I wasn't like the other students that came up like, oh, you have tattoos, can we see it? But you know, as a young lad interested in tattoos myself, I went up in a very polite way and said, oh man, I really like to use tattoos and you teach. And he said, would you like to talk about tattoos? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And I got the story of how he'd, you know, been educated from Oxford and that, and then they were like, oh, you got to cover those up. And he got so annoyed with that he went and did his PhD somewhere else.
Oh, that's amazing.
So I'm like, that's actually really cool. That was my idea as well. I was like, yeah, fuck Oxford. Like,
yeah, definitely. I would do that too.
But I mean, as you can see from Tom Rocks, which was a guy you could have met as well at the conference earlier today, even Oxford is warming up to it.
Good.
I mean, he's a maths professor. Young guy. I'm just guessing. Else he's keeping up very. If he's older than me, I will be in shock. And he might be, for all I know, but he just doesn't look it. But it's Tom Rocks Maths, and he's a great guy. I don't think I'll ever get him on here, but he's a great guy. I met him at the conference, and he's covered in tattoos.
Oh, right.
And he's the leader of a house at there. I think he's head of mature students now, and he's a math professor.
Oh, that's amazing.
But the impressive thing is he's at Oxford. He has a YouTube channel where he does stuff with maths. So, you know, and as anybody, to explain to people why that's important to mention, when you're in an academic institution, at least in the UK and I would say in the US and most other places, they also like to keep an eye on, if you work for them, what you do on your social media, what you do with your public presence.
Yes.
So that's why it's important to mention that it's quite impressive as well that he does a YouTube channel. Sometimes you see him fully uncovered with all his tattoos and that. I mean, that's quite a big step from one of the world's most prestigious institutions to go from, really you have to cover those 13 years ago or more, and then being like, no, roll him out front. Like, let the kids see.
It's a lot of good progress. It's really good to see. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And same with, Matt Davis, educated from Harvard, which is another, big one.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But also, I mean, yourself, you're leading with a great example there.
Oh, thank you.
Not just being a lecturer or a professor in psychology, but being a head of psychology as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
mean,
guess. Yeah.
it's the first head of an institution I've met that's as common as you, Becky.
That's a good point. Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that.
I'm happy I can help you see the point yourself.
I hadn't thought of that. Yeah.
You never think about that when you meet the other colleagues.
No, I never do. I guess because you're not looking, like, you cannot see yourself how other
No.
people see you, can you? And yeah. But now I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking, yeah, I don't see them.
Oh no, I've made her self-conscious.
Never.
But it is. I really love that you've been on here for this episode as well, because even though we've been talking a lot of rubbish, I hope this helps people see the idea that you don't take away anything when you're tattooed, and it doesn't prevent you from having a career or from being good at what you do.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I mean, that's the thing. You were heavily tattooed before you moved up these massive steps as well. Even though you may not have been it all the way through your academic career, you have been for quite a while, right? For quite a while.
Yeah, definitely.
And you still made those steps, and you still, carved your place into those things. And I think that's important to let people know, not in that only in an inspirational young people you can do it too kind of way, but also in the way that to push these barriers and stigmas.
Yeah,
because there's some scientists show nowadays, and I'll quote him again because he's a good friend by now, and I do like what he does in his book from last year. But as Michael Reese talked about, there is a lingering stigma. And as I interpret what he writes, the target has just been moved a bit. So people don't mind a few tattoos or a little tattoo or a half sleeve but they still very much mind people like me and Becky.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why it's important to show that, well, it doesn't make us less intelligent or anything like that. It doesn't make us any less enthusiastic. We just also really like weird shit and tattoos.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's the thing. Actually, how do you still teach, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I hesitated to guess because there are some heads, that get so busy sometimes that teaching sort of, takes a downturn or they take breaks.
Oh yeah, I mean, don't get us wrong. I feel like I've barely got time for it at the minute, but I do still have a module in male psychology, and I do some introductory lectures on evolutionary psychology for the first years and stuff as well. So
that's actually really cool. I'll be in Sunderland at some point. I can hear.
Excellent.
But I was wondering that what do you wear when you teach then?
Pretty much stuff like this, really. Or sometimes I wear like t-shirt and jeans and stuff when I'm teaching, and yeah.
Okay, so do the students then, like, because I could tell when I just as a GTA taught some seminars, that they sat there almost jittering the first couple of seminars I taught because you could just tell in their eyes the only thing they wanted to talk about was my tattoos. Like, they just very much wanted, even though some of them, because it's a new times today, they still had some tattoos themselves. It was very much, the smaller, weirder, a lot of them ignorant style tattoos, I think they call it today. Small tattoos often done by a mate or something like that.
Yeah.
So seeing me with my sleeves and my neck and all that, you could just tell in a lot of them, they were like, when can I ask him? Can I get that? You get that
I never noticed. I honestly never noticed unless people do actually ask us. And
I'm probably going to get a message on Instagram from Becky next time she's taught. I saw it now.
I see it now. I remember years ago when, like, before I'd finished my PhD, it was a thing, and like I'd be introducing something, and then someone would go, "Can I just ask, how many tattoos do you actually have?" And like, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Like, next question.
Or you just start the list being like, I don't know, I love them all, no regrets.
Yes, it hurts.
At least when you get the real ones. I mean, at least when you get big ones.
Yes.
I've met. That was actually one thing I got with a student at one point because they wanted my advice at one point. Very lovely student. They were very polite about it. They weren't rude about it at all. But at one point, they were like, I said, "Oh, and you do got to be careful with the pain of that. That does get worse when you get older." And then they just immediately, without batting an eyelid, said, "Oh, mine didn't hurt." And then I accidentally just looked at their arm and saw the very small, like barely there tattoos they had. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I imagine they didn't."
Yeah, my mum's got one that's literally this big, and she's like, "Oh, mine didn't hurt," and I'm like, "I'm not surprised. It didn't kick in yet."
I think the only thing I said to the student, which she had a laugh about herself, luckily, so I think she took it in stride. But I said to her, "All right, I want you to come back to me and tell me if it hurts if you've ever spent more than 3 hours in the chair."
Yes, yes. How do you manage at that point?
And they were like, "Oh, how long have you spent in the chair?" And I'd recently sat 8 hours at that point. So I was like, "Oh, last time was 8."
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
just smart a bit after the first hour.
it definitely does. It's not fun.
Well, I love it. I mean, I love to hang out as well and talking and all that stuff. Love the studio vibe in a good studio and all that.
Yeah,
Still hurts like a cunt.
yeah. I still hate that part. Yeah, definitely. I still
Oh,
need to psych myself up for it.
and I let my Glasgow love show there with the C word, but can't help it. I can't help it at some point. It's a lovely
No,
word.
it's my favorite word that I use all of the time.
Oh, you can let one fly now if you want.
What a cunt.
On that note, which I never thought I'll have to say about that way, to end this off I mean, there's no need for a lighter note. We'd have an absolute joy right now, and this topic turned out to be actually quite heartwarming and positive. I was fearing we were going to have, you know, some darker stories or something like that, which I'm very pleasantly surprised we actually didn't. Like,
Yeah.
you sometimes don't know how it's going to be at another institution or for anybody else. You can never know anybody else's experience, even. So I was prepared for that, even though I was very welcomed in Glasgow, in mind that you might have had a different story in Sunderland.
Yeah.
Also, knowing the English people, but I will say that's mainly down south. They can be a bit more prickly.
Yes. Yes, they can.
But I want to ask, and this is an impossible question, I know, especially for someone like you. What's your favorite tattoo?
God, that is hard
I
to
love the
say.
scavenger hunt that Becci's going on now on her own skin.
Do you know, there's something about my chest tattoo that's just it's always going to be one of my favorite ones. But then, when your most recent one is always your favorite as well.
I mean, absolutely. I don't know anyone where the most recent ones aren't a little bit the favorite.
Yeah, definitely.
But I do. I mean, that goes for children as well. I hear sometimes, but
I can't share that.
I don't have any myself, so I can say that without any hesitation. My parents did the smart thing. They had twins, so they have to love us equally.
That's a good shout. Good shout.
But I do agree. Like the most recent one is often the favorite, like by default. But
Yes.
I also have the same feeling as you as well. There that I do like. There's a special love in my heart for my chest piece. Like, even though it's 3 different tattoos, where one is a blaster or with the old ones, I just like it because it's very in your face and it's very much me in a way.
Yeah.
I do get jealous sometimes when you see new people that are like have thought it more through, have done the things I would advise younger people to do. And they have these amazing new traditional pieces that take up the whole chest, and I'm there with my weird tribal amalgamation with some color in the background. I'm like, yeah, I love mine, but that's still really cool.
Yeah, I get this. I get that. Yeah.
Would you ever get the rest of the neck done?
Yes, definitely will at some point. Yeah.
Oh,
it's not booked in. I've not planned it or anything, and I've been seeing it for ages, but it has to be done at some point for sure.
I mean, I'm very biased because I do feel women especially pull off neck tattoos well.
Yeah.
Like the full neck. I think men also pull off neck tattoos well, but women with the full close stuff up to the jawline, there's something about that. There's something about that. And I will happily admit I am a cisgendered white male. I get that. But also I have my own preferences, and women with neck tattoos, there's just something about that.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel that there's a certain tattoo you think that looks best on this type of person?
I don't think there is actually. Sometimes when you just think, when you see somebody, an individual, and you just think that fits their shape or something really nicely, whether it's on, the shape of their arm or anything, and you just think, oh, that just looks so aesthetically pleasing, Yeah.
Like for example, I don't think face tattoos would suit my face. But I've seen both men and women where it just looks incredible on them.
Yes.
Face tattoos.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think I very much want to get the sides of the head on that done
Yeah.
one day.
Yeah.
Because I think that'll suit me.
Yeah.
But that's the thing to be mindful of. What suits yourself? What do you like on you?
That's
it.
it.
The first
I
person
do
that
have
needs
the
to like
side
you
done.
is yourself.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah, for sure. I've got a bit here done, but I used to have my head shaved a bit, and now I don't. And I do have that one there. Yeah,
I know.
Just
I know
a
you have
bit
to.
shaved.
Is it makeup or has it just faded a bit? Because I remember it was
Yeah,
very
it's
vivid at one
makeup.
point.
I've got makeup on for work.
That's the thing. That's the only thing. That's the only time I ever, because I'm usually very good with like, I know women put it on for their own sake, and their makeup can be quite powerful and all that stuff. The only time I ever get annoyed is when there's a beautiful tattoo I can't see anymore.
Yeah.
Like I'm very much one of the good guys in that sense, I would argue, but I just am such a fan of tattoos that whenever the covers up a tattoo I really want to see, I'm like,
do you know what? When my fringe is back, I do that. I wipe it out with a wipe when I've got my fringe up.
That's great. You're like, oh, they gotta see it. They gotta see it.
Yeah, I'm like, I cannot have that. Color it out.
But that's the thing. I think you said it very beautifully yourself there, and I think there's some psychology to that as well. That certain things you can really tell when people have paid a mind together with tattoo artists as well to what their own body shape is like.
Yeah.
And by this, I don't mean weight or fitness.
No, it's
much
just
more down
the shape and everything, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because tattoos look good on anyone, no matter what shape you're in the other sense.
Yeah, definitely.
It's way more paying a mind to. Same with piercings, I would say. Like,
yeah.
You yourself fits you very nicely with the sets of piercing. Other people, I don't think have sometimes think about what suits me.
Yeah, for sure.
For some people look great with like 17 piercings in their face, and other people definitely should have stopped at 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely.
But it's very much, I think it goes back to the psychological thing we talked about earlier with doing it for yourself rather than just following a trend or buying into, oh, this is the hot thing to do right now.
Yeah, definitely. It's important for sure.
Yeah, because I think people do that sometimes. They, no matter what it is, they sort of, instead of saying, oh, do I actually like this?
Yeah, exactly.
No, I have to like this, or I will like this because my friend liked it, or they liked it, or they did it and it looked cool. So I will, of course, also. No, that's not how it works.
That's it. That's it, exactly.
You really got to look yourself in the mirror and think, what do I think will look good on me?
Yeah, you do.
And I think people can tell, if they haven't listened to the conversation, at least they can tell from how we look at ourselves, Becci. We're not averse to people.
No, definitely not.
Getting tatted up or pierced or anything like that.
Exactly.
We're just saying, think it through.
That's right. That's right.
And then also go through with it.
Yeah. Go through.
But I do get why people are scared sometimes.
Yeah, it does hurt.
Well, not just that. It's like Matt talked about. I think you may agree with us. It's actually fun to try and test something we came up with in another episode, I guess, with another academic, especially someone from psychology, as neither me nor Matt are psychologists. But I think very much there is something profound that happens when you get a tattoo, no matter how much thought you put into the backstory or anything. There is a profound change in how not just other people see you, but also how you feel about yourself.
Yeah, I think so, definitely. And I think, if someone came along and just covered up all your tattoos with makeup and stuff, it would feel really weird just to be like you wouldn't be yourself anymore.
I do love those videos that have been done, for example, Becci Owens and all of them that did those. I can't remember what channel it was for, but they did, that whole thing with how people perceive them with and without their tattoos and that. But
really
man, I absolutely get what they say when they take it off and they feel like themselves again, because that is the thing.
Totally.
Oh. On that final note, because we are going to start another episode if we keep going by now, which it's been absolutely lovely. But I want to ask Becci, not that you need to have it, but if people are interested in what you do you have any projects going on? Do you have anywhere people can go and look at what you get up to?
I guess the main place would probably just be me staff website, which would be at sunderland.ac.uk, and we've got a bunch of staff profiles with links in there. We've got nothing else because we've still got the ink and immunity sort of bubbling away in the background, but nothing
Okay.
going at the minute. So yeah.
Other than that, I
Um,
just highly recommend myself if you like fun pictures to go and follow Becci on Instagram.
it's mainly cat photos, but you know,
It is, but it is good cat photos.
they are cute.
Well, Becci, I thank you so much for being on.
No worries at
And
all.
I've really enjoyed this. It's been
Good.
quite a ride, this episode.
Awesome, thank you.
And to anyone listening in, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Hello, everyone. That was quite the episode with Becci Owens, episode number 8, rounding off round 2 of the podcast. 2 whole rounds down, and we're a third one starting next time. 8 whole episodes, and the first episode of the year in the bag. Next time with episode 9, we start off round 3 of the podcast with the Hexagon collector himself, the OG who started what has now almost become a trend, or at least a certain style of collecting that people have started to do all over the world now. We're going to be talking about his incredible collection with legendary artists that have worked on him, and a bit about this whole thing of whether imitation really is the highest form of flattery, so to speak. It's going to be quite the episode, and I look forward to you guys enjoying that episode in a couple of weeks' time.